Can you help me understand do and sin a little more? Well, Brian and I both believe that you should understand the material before you use a memory aid device. The memory aid device is just to help you with what you should already know. So when it comes to spreads, because that's what this is about, spread means difference. And what you're spreading is the difference in the premiums. Now, one thing you might want to know, you've got to be able to identify a spread, is that when you're looking at a spread, a good memory aid device to add is SOTA. And what SOTA stands for is same option, different action. Same option. You have two types of option contracts, calls and puts. So same option, two calls or two puts, different action, you're buying and selling. And the spread is the difference between those premiums. And you're either buying the spread, money out, or you're selling the spread. So what do and sin are is memory aid devices to know that if I have a debit spread, I want the contracts to be exercised. It would be profitable if my broker calls me and said, Dean, you were exercised. I want the difference since I'm buying the spread. You know, the difference is, let's say the difference is 7. And Brian calls me. He says, Dean, what's my spread? My spread, Brian, now is 9. You want me to close it out for a 2-point profit? So if Brian buys the spread for 7 and he can close it for 9, he's made 2. I think I use the sport betting analogy, Brian, like what's the spread on the game? Right. And what you're betting on is the difference in the scores. And some people want it outside of that spread. Some people want it inside that spread. So I think when you're wide, like Dean, you need to exercise, right? In some cultures, being wide is a sign of wealth and prosperity, but unfortunately not ours. Now, credit means you sold the spread, right? You're the seller of the spread, and you're smart enough to know, you know what, just in case this thing blows up, I think I'll cover this with another leg, right? So here we're selling the spread. Whenever we sell options, we want them to expire so we can go neener. And we want the difference to narrow. So if Brian sells the spread for 7, he didn't buy it, he sold it. It's a credit spread of 7. He calls me, he says, Dean, what's the spread? I say, it's 9. You're down 2, my friend. He says, let it ride. He calls me, what's it now? I go 4. You want me to close it out for a 3-point profit? I think that wide and narrow concept is the hardest part to get, but you don't need to get it because of these memory aid devices. There is no scenario on your exam in which you identify a debit spread, more money out than in, and you say exercise widen for profitability, in which you'll be wrong. There's no scenario on the test in which you net the premiums, credit, more money in than out, and you don't want the contracts to expire, or you don't want the difference in the premiums to narrow. Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah, just on top, one thing on top of that, and you mentioned it. The most crucial part of all of this is you have to recognize whether it's a debit or credit spread.
That's the first thing out of the gate. That's right. You got to net those premiums. I use dollars out.
Doesn't come with premiums.
Yeah.
And
well,
you have to learn which one has
it. Doesn't come with premiums.
Yeah.
John, that's the most complicated, I think, version of this. The mantra, if you're missing your premiums, different memory aid device. Mantra. Yeah. Lower, higher, longer. Lower, higher, longer. If you're missing premiums, lower, higher, longer. The lower strike call always has the greater premium. Higher. Lower, higher, longer. The higher strike put always has the greater premium. The reason that's important, by the way, is Brian's point about debit or credit, but also that's what determines bullish or bearish.
Right.
Lower, higher, longer. Longer term option contracts always have greater premiums. Now, another memory aid device, John, before we move on, I'll link to my advanced options lecture in the video description. But one more thing before we move on is credit has 6 letters, expire has 6 letters, and narrow has 6 letters.
That's
another way to memorize it, right? One more kind of a test-taking memory aid device as it relates to advanced options. So the other advanced option strategy you have is a straddle. And a good memory aid is SADO. And a straddle, same action, buy, or sell, different option. You're buying a call, buying a put, or selling a call, selling a put. So Brian thinks there's less option strategy questions than I do. I say 20 option questions plus or minus. I think, Brian, what you think, 10, 15 in most draws?
Generally 12 to 15 is
Oh,
what I
there you go.
usually.
So,
Yeah.
but we think it's important, John. So, you should know that.